Hi, Hafide, Tolohamzu. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first broadcast of Pasifika Transmissions. Our transmission home base is in Long Beach, and so we're going to acknowledge the Tongva people as the stewards of this land before we came to live here. We like to invite you now, if you're joining us, to use the chat to tell us where you're dialing in from and to acknowledge the first stewards of the land where you now live. As is our mission, a Pasifika transmission is our way of enhancing cultural competency and showcasing the vibrant talents and histories of the indigenous artists in our community. Each artist is invited to the Pacific Island Ethnic Art Museum to be paired with pieces from the museum's archive. This is an incredible, incredible gift to us Pacific Islanders living away from home, because PIEAM, as it's so lovingly referred to, is the only museum in the contiguous United States with a mission to amplify the collective wisdom of the people of Oceania. It is also a collection by our community. Many sacred objects from families have been donated or stored at PIEAM through the years. Go ahead and find PIEAM on Instagram at PIEAM_arts. Of course, this couldn't happen without the generous support of the Robert Gumbiner Foundation and the Roomba Foundation of Long Beach. It's my extreme pleasure to introduce the director of PIEAM, Auntie Fran, and this month's artist, Kiki Rivera. So if you guys can turn on your cameras. Auntie Fran is our Chamorro elder in the community, and she holds the title of director for the Pacific Island Ethnic Art Museum, which holds the responsibility of caring for and housing many sacred objects and utilitarian objects from across our great ocean family. Kiki Rivera is an internationally produced, award-winning theater artist, educator, and arts activist. Kiki believes in the power and necessity of self-reflective storytelling from a contemporary indigenous perspective and creating space for marginalized theater artists of color. Auntie Fran, would you tell us more about the Dilukai that Kiki has been paired with?
Sanamasi, Marikita. The Dilukai is actually a Belauan, which is also referred as Palauan, term that actually just means statue. It's either the form of a man or a woman, and it is often installed at an abai, which is actually a central meeting house. They signify a story or a legend of that place or abai. The female Dilukai signifies the empowerment of her sexuality. Most Dilukais are made of wood and some are actually made of stone. This Dilukai carving that resides at PIEAM was carved in Yap and inspired by Belau. I chose Kiki to respond to this piece because of her work on cultural and sexual identity and the effects on colonization. She has been responding to this carving, and we want to thank the people of Belau for receiving us. Sanamasi.
Sanamasi, absolutely. Now, Kiki, before we show your 2 video responses with your time with the Dilukai, would you tell us what your first encounter was like with the Dilukai?
Yes, but before I do that, I also want to say mahalo nui to Auntie Fran, to you, Marikita, for this opportunity, and thank you, Esil, for always being there and all the work that you do behind the scenes. Mahalo, mahalo, mahalo. Yes, so my first encounter was actually with Rowdy the night before my actual transmission. And that was really powerful for us to be in the space and for me to get acquainted with the space. And I felt like while we were watching her from the outside, like she wanted to be part of this party that everybody else, that all the ancestors were a part of inside the museum. Anyway, I just wanted to say that first. And then
Rowdy was our last Pasifika transmission. He started this all off with Tiniku time. So he was our first transmission artist.
Yes. And then the next day I went and I sat out in the garden and just meditated while gazing deep into her eyes. And that's what the communication happened between us during that time. And that communication was her telling me to restore her. And you'll hear the words in my videos. But I was nervous because I was like, whoa, this is a museum. You know, I don't come in and just restore something. But I think that's what I learned about what makes PIEAM different. This is more, it doesn't feel like a museum. It feels more like a house, and it's not so clinical like other museums can be. And everything feels very much alive and like a family. Like we're all part of this unified moana. Auntie Fran says it's her job to believe that we can communicate, and that's really different. To have a museum like that, and then to have a director, an auntie who's telling you, okay, you do whatever you need to do. So those were my first encounters.
Yeah, I'll just like interject real quick because there's something that we talked about before, which I feel like what makes this project so important is that it might not be one specific island taking care of their national object or their, sacred object, but that we can in turn care for other objects. And so, especially being in lands that away from home, and connecting, here we can, take care of our ocean neighbors, and that's just very beautiful to me that we all have a part in that. That though you might, that we can be a part of that process to just make sure that everything is cared for and treated well away from its homeland.
Yeah, and that's what it felt like. It felt like I was there with all of the kupuna and taken care of. Like I felt like I was taking care of somebody else's kupuna, and therefore she became my own.
Well, Kiki, should we show the first video?
Sure.
Gaze into my eyes. Breathe me into life. I am every woman you have ever loved, and every woman that has ever loved you. Open yourself up. Receive me, all of me. See me for who I am, all of me. Accept me for who I am, all of me. I am every woman you dare to understand, and every woman you have failed to understand, misinterpret, and re-story through the eyes of men. Restore my existence, an intimate relationship with the natural world. Let my skin breathe. Breathe me into life. In the house of women I will reside, where I can see myself reflecting back at me, sitting in my divinity. Scrape away my bitter past of financial transactions and false narratives based on my sex as men's prized possession. I will not be possessed. I will be remembered as your grandmother, as your mother, your aunties, your sisters, your lovers, as all women who have loved you, and you will in turn love yourself.
So in order to prepare for this, I wanted to talk about what I did, right? So an Olelo no Eo came to me while meeting her, and that's a Hawaiian proverb, and it's Nana Kamaka, Ho'olohe ka pepeau, Pa'a kawaha, Hana kalima. And that's look with the eyes, listen with the ears, shut the mouth, and work with the hands. So for me, this Olelo no Eau calls for active listening, active receiving, and there's a lot of intuitive listening that goes into my process. So taking the time to perform sacred self-care first is key for my own listening and tuning in. And I set up a ritual for when I'm in the space at PIEAM, and I try to keep my own emotions in check. So to make space for the actual transmission. And when the emotions did come to the surface, it felt like they were done in direct relation to working with the Dilukai. Like she wanted me to feel and process this one particular thing, and that's when the tears would flow and my own healing would take place. And that also has to do with my relationship with my own grandmother. So I feel really in tune with the Dilukai, and it's a really beautiful feeling. There's so much love and care in that space between and among us. And she's taught me so much regarding the importance of real deep love for self and the capacity to love that all women, all people who identify as women possess. And I think that's the lesson for all of us.
Ceremony begins with acknowledgement of everything that comes with you. Begins with openness, seeing, I see you. I see what you see. Begins with touch. Begins with ha, breath. It's shedding the old to make room for the possibilities of new. It's scraping the blistering, toxic paint to allow your skin to breathe, while my arthritic hands freeze around the metal scraper, while dust of wood, paint, and stripper particulate escape into my lungs past the 2 mask guards, laboring to breathe, my body dripping in sweat under an ominous sky, laboring to love you.
So I want to talk a little bit more about that process and some of the lessons that I hope the audience will take away, which is the lesson of deep and radical love of self and others. And there's also a lesson of how we take care of our kupuna. Like I said, that was a healing experience for myself, and it made me think about how I did or did not take care of my own grandmother. And that includes all of our elders and all of the ancestors that exist before us. And that's the cool thing about being involved with Pasifika Transmissions, is that you really feel this oneness with all of the ancestors of the Moana. And it's a great reminder that we need to see that they're among us, and they see us. And that idea of being fully seen by them expands the plane of existence. And it's reverent seeing, which is where love exists. And I think it's also permission to move past colonizing, decolonizing verbiage and ideas, and into simply being and moving forward in our fully seen, fully realized, fully accepted selves, whatever that means. James Waititi, who's a Maori artist, talked about re-Moanification, which I thought was such a cool word, about reclaiming space and the unification of our ocean. And so I think this is a good time to re-Moanify. Yeah. I also wanted to talk about ceremony. Because I feel like so much of this was ceremonious, and I was also battling between like, what is ceremony, and what does that mean for me? And to me, ceremony is the act, like the actual act of taking care of the Dilukai, and going in every day and scraping that paint and getting to oil her. Like, for myself, the action is the ceremony, and the ceremony that we see on this video, like, I question that, and I question these little ceremonies because I feel like they're so performative, right? Because this is like this was for, that video was for this moment right now that everyone gets to witness. Yeah. Period.
No, that's a really good point. Because especially it just calls to mind also, I think that the other reason why we're doing this right now, but also just the times that we live in, right? Like perhaps, when JP, other artists have taken up residency at PIEAM, they're in that space and the doors can be open. And unfortunately right now, the museum is not open to the public. And so because you're taking charge and literally caring for one of the objects, you can come there just with but it's not a public viewing anymore, right? Or it's nothing, it is more, in a sense, more intimate, but it's how do we share that process, or this, in especially these kind of forums, and connect in that way. So yes, so you were saying something to me earlier about the creative process, or how that I think the creative act and the kind of sacred act that came through with your words. And I feel like my role was just to kind of just capture some of the actions, some of the deeds, some of the, and the ceremony that you were doing. And so, yes, it is almost like a different ceremony in this expression that everybody is seeing with us today.
Right.
I would like to add something to both of you. And when both of you, again, the end product was, of course, this wonderful video. But when you say you're capturing this ceremony, understand that you are the ceremony.
Thank you.
Thank you, Auntie Fran. There's another, in other conversations, I'm like, man, that's a really good way to end this. So, but we had talked about, you know, Kiki had introduced us to this Hawaiian word. And I also thought that that was a great way to amplify the relationships that we're building. So I was wondering if you might also share that with the audience, Kiki.
Yes, a word that was coming to mind during this process is pilina, and that's relationship. And that for myself, it's it's connection. That's what pilina is. It's the connection. It's to stick, to adhere, to join. So it's these relationships with familiarity, it's closeness. And so for myself, a lot of this is this growing pilina between myself and the Dilukai, and myself to the earth, because she is made out of wood. And so what is that relationship? What is my relationship with her? What is the relationship with the earth? What is the relationship to women and my mothers and grandmothers and aunties and sisters? And how do we care for each other and show closeness? And yes. So what are those relationships that draw you closer? And so I also wonder, like, if there are words like that, like what is it in Chamorro? Think about what is pilina in your own language, and what is your relationship with the earth? What is your relationship with the moana that I'm looking at right now, and the people that we belong to, and caring for those people?
Wonderful. So
Thank you.
I want to encourage everyone that's watching to consider that question and share your response in the chat. What is Polina in your language, and what does Polina mean to you? And with that, unfortunately, we're going to close now and sign off. Mahalo nui, Kiki. It has been such an honor and such a pleasure to work with you. Mahalo nui. Saina ma'asi, Sizus ma'asi, Auntie Fran, for keeping us in check, for being there with us, for supporting us, for really, really just backing the future generations. So you just really appreciate all the work that you do. And Our Lady Isil, we have to give you props as well. She might not show her face on the video, but there are other people who are working behind the scenes and holding this together. They're the glue for Pasifika Transmissions. So thank you so much. Thanks again for joining. Stay in touch by following this page on Facebook or at PIEAM_arts on Instagram for more information. And our next artist is Chamorro native Sid and Duenas. And he will be paired with his artifacts starting next week. So stay tuned. Thank you, everyone.